Did you choose the event? Okay,
live. Okay, welcome everybody to our class. Today I'm not going to make a bracha sha'akol niyah b'dvaro because it's a fast day. So we'll not be eating and not be drinking, but studying. Food for the soul. So we're going to begin on page 250, and we're of course going to speak about, as we promised, we'll speak about the Mashiach. First, I'll tell you a little joke about Mashiach's coming. That is, there was once this inn where there was an innkeeper and his wife, and they woke up in the middle of the night. They heard somebody, one of their guests was crying. Went to check up. The husband went to knock on the door to see if this rabbi is okay. And the rabbi says, yeah, I'm just saying Tikkun Chatzot. Tikkun Chatzot is the prayers we pray at midnight. Well, today not many people do that, but it used to be more commonplace. The prayers to mourn the destruction of the temple and to pray for Mashiach. So he goes back to his wife. He says he's praying for the Mashiach. So his wife tells him, tell him I'm not sure why we would want to go to Israel, but we're quite happy over here in Eastern Europe in our little tavern that we have, in our little kreshma. So he goes back and tells this rabbi, I'm not sure why do we need the Mashiach? He says, what do you mean? Mashiach comes, there'll be no anti-Semitism. Mashiach comes, you won't have an angry landlord. Mashiach comes, you'll have many good things. You won't be scared of the Cossacks. So he goes back and tells his wife. So his wife says, how about tell this man, maybe you should pray that the anti-Semites and the Cossacks and the angry landlord should all go to Israel and leave us here. So when we talk about Mashiach, we have to clarify that this is, sometimes we view ourselves as being in a state of, some kind of comfort when we have that state. And we look at the Mashiach as being a disruption. The reality is, you have to understand that the world, the way we know it, where godliness is obscured, where there can be strife, there can be argumentativeness in a negative way, there can be terror, and all the other things that we fear in our daily life, that is a disruption, that is a straying away from a norm of a godly world. The norm, which we look forward to, the coming of Mashiach, is where God will be revealed and godliness will be revealed. The world will be a good place. The world will be a place of peace. All people will be focused on the obvious truth. Today, the truth is not obvious. Mashiach comes, the truth will be obvious, and therefore all nations of the world will also join in serving God. They won't all be Jewish, but they'll all understand the godly existence and the godly purpose for creation. And once everybody understands that we're all in it, we're all in the same boat, so then it'll be a totally different reality. So this is something we look forward to avidly, but the thing is, we've been looking forward to it for a long time. For how long? So look here at page 215. Text 2a, this is a quote from this week's Parsha, where Yaakov is about to pass away, and he called all his sons together. Yaakov called for his sons, and he said, gather, and I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. Okay, what does that mean, at the end of days? Rashi comments and says, and I will tell you, he attempted to reveal the end of the exile. He wanted to tell them the date of Mashiach coming, when this world, as we know it, finishes, when we go into redemption. But the Shekhinah withdrew from him. So he began to say other things. So we want to know, how long are we interested to know about the coming of Mashiach? Yaakov passed away in the year, how many years from creation? Passed away, it's more, the Exodus from Egypt was year 2448 from creation. They were in Egypt for a period of 210 years. So 2448 minus 210, that's how long? 248 minus 210.
230.
How many years ago is 2448? Let's do it that way. 5777 minus 2448 is Approximately 3,000, and you can do the mathematics quickly.
3,000 something years ago.
3,000 something years ago. Add another 200, about 3,500 years ago is what took place when Yaakov gathers his kids around and says, I want to tell you when Mashiach's coming. God doesn't let him in. God takes away the information. So we see that this is something hidden. But let's back this up also from the Gemara. The Gemara tells us in the tractate of Pesachim, 54b, that our rabbis taught 7 things are hidden from mankind. The day of death, the person doesn't know the day he's going to die. The day of consolation, in other words, when God is going to console us for all the trouble. The exactness of judgment, what another person is thinking, we don't know. How a person will earn a living, how we're going to pay our bills. So for those who sometimes get worried about how they're going to have a parnasa, that's something that God willingly, consciously withholds from us. When the kingdom of David will return, that was when Mashiach will come, and when the evil rule will end, also a stage in the coming of Mashiach. So basically, these are things that we don't know. God hides it from us. So the question here, basic question is, why did Yaakov want to reveal it? Why does God want to keep it hidden? What's going on over here? If it's good that it be revealed, why doesn't God reveal it? Why doesn't He let Yaakov tell us? And if it's not good to be revealed, why does Yaakov want to tell us? So first of all, how do we know in these verses that Yaakov actually wanted to give this information away? So let's just take a parenthetical look here. Why did Rashi tell us that Yaakov was planning to divulge this secret information? So let's look at the verse. It's the pasuk. It's text 4a. The Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, who's one of the early commentaries on Rashi, asks like this: I don't understand what compelled Rashi to say this. How does he see in the words that it means that Yaakov wanted to reveal the coming of Mashiach? Why can't the words that Yaakov said, I will tell you what will happen to you, be understood as a reference to what will happen in the future to each of the tribes? And as indeed the Rashbam does give that explanation, the grandson of Rashi, Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir, he says at the end of days, I'm going to speak about their strength and inheritances. So why is it that Rashi ran off? Usually Rashi gives the very basic interpretation of the verse, the most simple explanation of the verse. Why does he go here and say something a little more esoteric, a little more midrashic? Say that Yaakov wanted to tell us a secret of when Mashiach's coming, when really he could have just said, Yaakov wants to, really what Yaakov's saying is, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you in the future. And he does start to prophesize about them going to Israel, what kind of portion they're going to get in the land, and things like that. Why does Rashi go and say that Yaakov wanted to give us some kind of hidden information? So let's look a little more deeply into the verse, into the pasuk, and let's see that it's there, if you wish, in the actual words of the pasuk. So in Bereshis, this is chapter 49, verse 1, beginning of our discussion. Let's go back to that pasuk. Yaakov called for his sons and he said, gather and I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. So you notice here, he said, gather and I will tell you what will happen at the end of days. The next verse, pasuk 2 in chapter 49, he repeats basically the same thing, but he says it a bit differently. He says, gather and listen, sons of Yaakov, and listen to Israel your father. A different language. One is hey asfu. First time he says gather, the word used is hey asfu. Second time he says gather, it's just hikavtsu, which means like kibbutz, gather around. What's the difference between hey asfu and hikavtsu? Hey asfu seems to mean like gathering up from outside. Hikavtsu means gathering something that's already inside, but just gather more closely together. So the Klei Yakar points out as follows, that this is hinting at a difference. What's the difference? The Klei Yakar says like this. The term, when we talk hey asfu, when we use that language of gathering, that term applies to one situated in a public place, who then moves inside to a more private place. As in the verse we say in the Va'asafto el toch beitecha, shall bring it into your house. But the term refers to people spread out who merely gather together, even if it will be out in the open. When you say hikavtsu, gather together, it doesn't necessarily mean gather together inside and gather together in a more private way. It can just mean even outside. Just gather together because I want to share some information with you. So heasfu denotes something more secret. So why does the Yaakov say two statements? First he says, gather for some secret information. And then he says, you know what, just gather and I'll tell you some information. Why does he change from talking about gathering in a more intimate way and then just refer back to gathering just in a general way? It's because the level of classification of his message has changed. You know that when you become very high-level government, as you rise in levels of government, the levels of information that you're privy to changes. You get access to classified information. So Yaakov first indicated he was going to share classified information. He used the word heyasfu, and then he moves over to hikavtsu, which seems to be just more standard information. What was that? Because at the beginning, at first Yaakov wished to reveal to his children the time of Mashiach's arrival. And such a secret cannot be revealed in a public place, lest someone unworthy hear it. For a secret of God is only for those who fear Him. Therefore he said, gather. The word he used was heyasfu, gather intimately. And I will tell you what will happen to you at the end of days. But immediately he felt that this matter was hidden from him. He wanted to talk and he felt God took the information away from him. So he changed his wording and he said, gather and listen, sons of Jacob, to hear words that are not secret and can be spoken in public. He just told them information about the future, about what will happen, but no longer the level of classified information that he was referring to. Now let's think about this. What could Yaakov have shared with them? Imagine he would have told them Mashiach's coming. So we know Mashiach hasn't come yet. We're hoping he's coming this year, today. How many years was it since Yaakov had that information? Since Yaakov wanted to give the information? 3,500 years ago, you're telling me, Yaakov wanted to tell his kids that in 3,500 years, Mashiach is coming. What do you think that would have done? Huh? If I tell you, be a good boy. Because in another 65 years, you're going to get ice cream if you behave now. What's that going to do? You're going to be, even if I tell you now you're going to get ice cream, I tell you, behave now, because in a couple of hundred years, your great-great-grandchildren will have a great amount of money. So you right now, be very frugal. Save your money, because in the year 2500, the English year 2500, that money that you have now saved is going to compound and compound and compound, and your great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be wealthy. Hello. Is that going to make me very excited about saving money now? Probably not. We can think in decades, we can think sometimes about kids, about grandchildren, but how many generations can we really think about? So what would that have done to them? Would that have inspired them or demotivated them? Demotivated. So some opinions say, you know why Yaakov forgot? Why he couldn't tell them? Because it would have been very uninspirational for them. They wouldn't have been motivated. But now the question will go back on Yaakov then. Why would he want to tell them? So you could say, others say, interesting twist, like this. Yaakov trusted his kids that they were tzaddiks, they were tzaddikim. Now you know, if you tell somebody Mashiach's not coming for 3,500 years, he's going to be very, the feeling, Shlomo HaMelech says, keep your clothes white and clean at all time. You never know when. When you will, as we say in Pirkei Avot, you don't know when you'll die. Make sure you're always in a state of being prepared for dying. In other words, the person would know, God forbid, they're dying at a certain date. They would do good deeds. They would repent. They would put their matters in order. They would maybe even physically make sure that they've signed a will. They would physically. It's strange, a very strange thing. I met a person who passed away in his 70s, and I know for sure that he was always saying, I don't want that relative of mine to inherit me. He didn't have any kids, and he didn't write a will, so that relative inherited. What was he thinking? He was thinking, I guess, and he had kidney disease. So, what? But people don't think. But if you would treat your life as if you would know that the day that he was dying, that he was about to die, he would have paid the lawyer, written a will, and put his affairs in order. That's even physically, materially. Talk spiritually, for sure. If somebody knows they're going to pass away, he's going to put his life in order. So, the question is, what was Yaakov planning to do? If he tells them it's in 3,500 years, they're not going to be very inspired. So some say that's exactly what Yaakov wanted. When you serve God, even though it's so difficult, it's more praiseworthy. The more effort, the more effort, the more reward. So Yaakov wanted to create for his kids a scenario where it'd be so difficult to serve God. Say, no, Mashiach's only coming 3,500 years. We can wait. Who's thinking about that? You know what? And Yaakov trusted, still in all they will serve Hashem. Oh, if they serve Hashem, even though they know Mashiach's only coming in 3,500 years, and it's so difficult, so that difficulty will bring them reward. He wanted to create difficulty, resistance, so that they'll get the credit. No, but the only problem with that is, the Rebbe points out, in a footnote in a talk, there's a problem. We pray every day, in the morning prayers, in the morning blessings, the Birkat HaShachar, V'al tiviyeino lidei nisayon. Please, Almighty God, don't bring us to a test. Don't bring us to a place where we have a challenge, because, hey, every challenge has, God forbid, the possibility of falling through the challenge. Right? So, why would Yaakov place upon his children such a challenge, such a test? That doesn't, even though a test brings more reward, we pray that we shouldn't have it. Because, yes, we may get the reward, but we may fall into the trap. Nobody wants to. So we don't ask for tests. When we go through a test, thank Hashem, giving us an opportunity. We understand the test is not to push us down. The test is to cause us, it's like you put a handicap, you put a hurdle in front of a horse, or in front of an athlete, a human athlete. The hurdle is not to make him trip, the hurdle is make him jump higher. We don't invite such things about ourselves. So what could Yaakov possibly have been wanting to tell the people? So there's another thought, and that is as follows. Really what Yaakov wanted to tell the people was about the going out of Egypt. The going out of Egypt is something that was much closer, right? When was the going out of Egypt supposed to take place? The going out of Egypt was supposed to take place when? How long after that? Anybody know? They were told they're going to be 400 years in Egypt, right? And they just descended into Egypt not long before this. So that's already not so distant. Now, is going out of Egypt the coming of the Mashiach? It's not. You know, we went out of Egypt more than 3,000 years ago. Mashiach still didn't come. But the fact of the matter is, it could have been the going out of Mashiach. It could have been the going out to the final redemption. In other words, if the Jewish people would have merited, and if the whole scenario that they played out in the desert wouldn't have happened the way it happened, and the Jews would not have sent the spies, and they wouldn't complain to God about going into Israel, and they wouldn't have done the golden calf and all those mistakes that they did. If that would have been the case, then Moshe would have been the one to take them into Israel. If Moshe would have been the one to take them into Israel, what would have happened? Moshe would have built the Beis Hamikdash. Moshe would have built the Beis Hamikdash. Moshe, whatever he does, is eternal. That would already have been the coming of Mashiach. There wouldn't have been further exile. So what Yaakov wanted to share with them is, guys, hang on. I want to tell you something, that this, in 400 years, we're getting out of here, and this could be the future redemption. The problem is, let me ask you about 400 years. How many people do you know that are ready to do something or to maintain a rigidity, to maintain a schedule, to maintain their belief, to make sacrifices today based on something that's going to happen in 400 years?
Jewish people.
Huh?
Jews.
Jews. True. We do things based on thousands of years, but we haven't given up our faith. But every generation we have faith and we wait. Coming of Mashiach now. So let's see that an interesting thing. We'll come back to this discussion about Egypt. But let's first start with a very interesting discussion about calculating the end of times. Text 6, page 255. The Gemara says, Tipach rucham shel mechashvei kitza, which means the bones shall shrivel up of those that try and say dates for Mashiach's coming. Gemara seems to say that if you give a prediction of a date, and then the date passes and nothing happens, you will cause people disillusionment. And indeed we have seen that there have been false messiahs, several false Mashiachs, throughout our history, which caused a great disillusionment. One of the great famous ones being a person called Shabtai Tzvi, who created a great disillusionment amongst the people of Israel, which the Baal Shem Tov had to come and repair. Several decades later, the Jews were very disillusioned. They had this person who had raised their hopes, Mashiach's coming, had proclaimed himself Mashiach, had acted irresponsibly, and turned out to be a hoax. Turned out to have converted to Islam under duress. So, the Gemara says, way before that, 2000 Gemara tells us, Tipach rucham shel mechashvei kitza, the bones shall shrivel up for those that give us end of day times. But yet we do find, after that Rabbi Sadia Gaon, for one, gives a date where he says he thinks Mashiach is coming. So the Rambam here in Igeret Teman answers for Rabbi Sadia Gaon and says as follows. In defense of Rabbi Sadia Gaon of blessed memory, who calculated end times, though he knew this practice is frowned upon, he was compelled to do so, for the people of his generation were full of crises of faith and would have all but given up the Jewish religion if not for him. Uniting the masses by calculating end times to truly strengthen their hope. There is something valuable about proclaiming that Mashiach is about to come, which what Yaakov wanted to do. It's to inspire hope, as the Rambam says, to instill hope, not to deaden hope. So obviously he wasn't telling them Mashiach's coming 3,500 years. Obviously he was talking about something much closer, which we now are going to explain is the Exodus of Egypt, which was within reach. Yet still we have a question, doesn't it seem a little bit too far beyond reach, but which we will discuss. Now let's see what the Maharal says, the Maharal of Prague. Maharal of Prague writes as follows: when the sages predicted a case, it's not as if they were definitively decreeing that it will come at that given time and hour. Rather, they revealed to us a time that was ripe for the case, for the end of days to occur. The case is one of those secret matters that cannot be revealed definitively. Interesting. It's a time that is ripe. A time that is a opportune time for Mashiach to come. Let me try and give for you an example. I don't know if we have an example let's think of an example, something which is an opportune time. It could happen, it could not happen. But if we push hard enough, this would be the right setup, this would be the right scenario for this thing to take place. So, what does that do? It inspires people. Wow, we have a chance. We have a chance where there's a high chance Mashiach is going to come. I don't want to use weather prediction as a Because weather prediction is not up to us. Somebody says all the meteorological factors are make it look like there's a high chance of the biggest blizzard that's ever been in history. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. But that's not a good example. Because when we get a date that's right for Mashiach's coming, it's in order to inspire us, and we can actually cause it to happen. It's happening and not happening, it depends on us. So, but let's even go back further and we see that in the book of Daniel, one of the 24 books, holy books, book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 5 to 13, let's see the vision he has. And I, Daniel, saw, and behold, two others were standing, one on this side of the riverbank, and one on the other side of the riverbank. And he said to the man clad in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long will it be until the secret end? And I heard the man clad in linen, who was above the waters of the river, and he raised his right hand and his left hand to the heavens, and he swore by the life of the world, not swore by God, that in the time of 2 times and a half, and when they have ended, shattering the strength of the holy people, all these will end. And I heard, but I did not understand. And I said, my Lord, what is the end of these? What does that mean? And he was explained as follows. And from the time the daily sacrifice was removed, and the silent abomination placed, is 1,290. Fortunate is he who waits and reaches days of 1,335. And you go to the end, and you will rest and rise to your lot at the end of days. So the secret is there. Now how do we decipher the secret? The book of Daniel, a prophetic book. So the Rashi explains, what does this mean, 1,290? It means 1,000, remember, the verse said, from the time the Tamid, which is the daily sacrifice, was removed. So he says that 1,290 years from the time the Tamid offering ceased, which was at the destruction of the second temple, until it will return with the coming of Mashiach. Ramban gives a bit of a different interpretation. It says this will be in the Hebrew year 5,118. For from the time the Tamid offering ceased until its restoration are 1,290 years. So, what year are we now? 5777 minus 5,118 is how many years ago? 5777 minus 5118. 7 minus that's going to be 9. 7 minus 2 is going to be 5. 6, 956 years ago. No. How many years ago? No, come on, some mathematics here.
600 and no, because it's 5118.
5777 minus 5118.
So it should be 600. 660. No.
You have to borrow.
Yeah. 650.
So what year?
59.
Something like that.
659 years ago. What is that? What is that in the secular years?
659.
2017 minus 659. We're all used to smartphones and our brains don't work anymore. It's terrible.
Come on,
I'm still sleeping.
Me too.
It's also the fast.
We're also fasting. No coffee, no drinks, no calories in our blood.
That is so hard if you
Yeah.
don't eat.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, it's about the year 14 something. Oh, you have a calculator. What's the matter with you?
And this,
I even forgot
this has a lot of
So do
mathematics.
5777 minus 5118. 777 minus 5118.
659.
659, we got it right. Okay, so 2017 minus 659.
1358.
Year 1358. So that's one of the times which we deciphered from the book of Daniel. It's a long time ago. Then the Rambam writes again in Igeres Teman, we have a wonderful and expansive tradition. We have somebody coming in on WhatsApp. He says that it's the year 1462. But did we come to the same calculation? We came to 13.
Did we do wrong?
I'm not sure if we did something wrong. But at any rate, I think we 1358.
Okay.
We have a wonderful tradition that Rambam says the prophecy will return to Israel in the Hebrew year 4976, which corresponds to 1216, 1216 on the secular calendar. It is without doubt that the return of prophecy is a precursor to Mashiach. So if 1358 is the date that Daniel seems to give in the book of Daniel, so then 1216, the Rambam says we have a tradition that prophecy will come back earlier, which is a precursor to Mashiach. This is more accurate than any other calculated end time. When did Rambam pass away? Rambam passed away not long before that. Rambam is about 750 years ago. Rambam.
Yeah.
So he's talking about Maimonides is giving a time when prophecy is going to come back as a precursor to Mashiach, which is in his realm, in his era. He passed away a little bit before that. So that tells us that they're talking the reason for giving dates. And again, tipach rucham, the masses may not give dates. For us, we can't figure out dates. But the select few, the leadership, the great saintly people, when they tell a date, and they tell a date not as a definitive date, which if it passes, it proves that they were false. But they can't give a definitive date. Because we said this is something that's hidden. But they give a date which seems to be, which is a ripe date. How does that work? So now let's understand that there are dates which are ripe, but still that would be depressing, wouldn't it? Imagine I tell you that Mashiach's coming in 50 years. Hello. So for 50 years we got to suffer now? So the answer is that, I want to maybe turn off the thing.
Yeah, it's too hot and
It's hot or cold?
hot.
Hot, so open that one. Open the one behind.
Thank
No,
you.
just press the, which one?
Not enough air. Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
that's it. That's why nobody's brain's working. Okay.
I'm fine.
So we say like this. We have to understand a very important concept regarding the coming of Mashiach. And that's why even if the date's not right now, it's not depressing, because there's a date and we have the controls, the toggle in our hands to make it come quicker than the date. Let's see what the Gemara tells us about this. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked, it is written regarding Mashiach's arrival. In one verse it says in the prophets, it will come in its time. Yet, the verse continues, the verse in Yeshaya, it says, Ani Hashem bi'ita, in its time, and then it says, Achishena, I will hasten it. So how does that make sense? If it comes in its time, so how does Hashem hasten it? And if Hashem is hastening it, so it's not coming in its time. The Gemara says there's two ways Mashiach can come. If the Jewish people are worthy, so Hashem says, I will hasten it before the time. But if not, the redemption will come in its time. In other words, there's a cutoff date. But then there's a way, if we act better, we speed and we accelerate. We get double miles, triple miles, and we start accelerating. Like some of the mileage programs, they have what's called an award accelerator. I'm not sure how it works. But we can get an acceleration, as we'll soon see happen before in our history. The Gemara continues, Rabbi Alexandri said in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, it is written in one verse, and behold with the clouds of the heaven. That it's going to become, we're going to be going to the redemption like on clouds of heaven, on heavenly clouds. But elsewhere it is written that Mashiach is coming humble and riding a donkey. It's a big difference if he comes in on a cloud, Mashiach, or he comes in on a donkey. So which is true? The answer is, there's two tracks, two possibilities. If the Jewish people are worthy, Mashiach will come with the clouds of the heaven. Come on a supersonic jet or something, or literally on the clouds. But if they are not, if we are not worthy, and God has promised that there will be an end So then he will come as one humble and riding a donkey. So there's two ways. And we have the controls in our hands. As we have another story in the Gemara about Mashiach. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi found Eliyahu, the prophet, standing at the entrance to the cave of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. It's pretty amazing. He sees Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, a tremendous sage, meets Eliyahu, the prophet. We all know who he is. He knows when Mashiach's coming. And he's at the entrance to the cave of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the greatest sage of all times. So the scenario is perfect. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says to Eliyahu, when will Mashiach come? Eliyahu answered, go and ask him. But where is he? Eliyahu tells Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, he's at the entrance of the city. And how shall I know it's him? He's sitting among the poor lepers. All the others untie all their bandages at once to clean their wounds before retying them. But Mashiach unties, cleanses, and reties one wound at a time. Thus, should he be called upon, he will not be delayed. So in other words, he doesn't open all his bandages at once, because then he'll have to, if Hashem tells him, go and announce the coming of Mashiach, go and come, he'll have to wait till he reties all his bandages. He does it one at a time, so he's available as quickly as possible to come and redeem the Jewish people. So Rabbi Yeshua went to Mashiach and said to him, peace upon you, my master and teacher. Mashiach responded, peace upon you, my son, the son of Levi. When will the master come? And when will Mashiach come? And what does Mashiach answer? Today. Rabbi Yeshua went back to Eliyahu and he said, Mashiach lied to me. Because he said he'd come today, but he didn't come. So Eliyahu Hanavi explained, this is what Mashiach told you. Today, if you listen to God's voice, in other words, he can come today. Hayomim bekolot ishmau, as the verse in Psalm says. Today, if you listen to God's voice, it's up to you. In other words, all this tells us that there's a date, but that date is not a fixed date. That date is just a date beyond which it cannot be. But then there is the possibility to make it earlier. So what would we be doing by explaining, by revealing that the day is very close? Making people work harder, be more inspired to make it happen even quicker. So we said, why did Yaakov want to tell us about the going out of Egypt, that this could be the coming of Mashiach? Guys, get ready, act well. Remember, we're here in Egypt and I'm about to die, says Yaakov, but keep on acting good because this could be the final redemption. Why does he want to tell them? Want to make them depressed because it's left 210 years to go? No. Because Yaakov's intention in text 11 is the Rebbe's explanation. Yaakov's intention was this: if the Jewish people would know that Mashiach's arrival is hinged upon their merit, they would increase their divine service so as to hasten the redemption before its set time. As the Talmud states, if the Jewish people are worthy, I will hasten it. So he wanted to tell them, guys, Mashiach's going to come. You can make it even happen quicker than the prescribed 210 years. And actually, Egypt is a good indication that this actually took place in our history. Indeed, so it was in the Exodus from Egypt. One of the reasons the Jews were enslaved for 210 years instead of the 400 years promised to God, by God, at the covenant of the parts, God said you'll be in Egypt 400 years. If you count the amount of years they were in Egypt only 210 years. Why the discrepancy? The reason is because that the harshness, the toughness and harshness of their slavery made up what was lacking in years. The years were considered like double time. Actually, they were 210 years in Egypt, but they were only 86 years in hard labor. But that hardship was so hard, it was considered as if the whole period was 400 years. They went out after 210 years of being in Egypt. Let's think about it this way. If the harshness of the slavery in Egypt could be considered for extra time, so imagine, we always know the good side is always better than the negative side. So certainly an increase in good deeds will bring the redemption sooner. Good behavior, acting more inspired, acting more connected to Hashem, will make the years be calculated even more accelerated, even quicker way, and then they'll go out even quicker. So by telling them, look, I want to tell you the secret when Mashiach's going to come, and I also want to tell you that this can be hastened. makes them inspired that it's achievable. It's not in 3,500 years. It's coming up within 200 years, but we can accelerate it. So then, the Jewish people will make a big effort and try. So that sounds very nice. So why didn't Hashem? Only one problem with this whole theory. Yaakov seems to have gotten it right. He wanted to create a movement within the Jewish people of inspiration. They should work hard to try and bring Mashiach. What was wrong with it? Why did Hashem make him forget it? So let's understand like this. I'll tell you, we were little kids. We were walking home. We lived at the top of a hill. We used to think it was a very big hill. I revisited that place, that block in Melbourne, Kalimna Grove. It's not such a big hill. Although we had a lot of fun as kids building go-karts from old baby carriages and with boards and woods and going down the hill, the sidewalk, and the go-karts. It was a little dangerous because there was bumps. And, it was dangerous enough, but it wasn't such a huge hill. But it was still, you huffed and puffed, you walked up the hill. I remember coming home from shul, we were little kids, and I don't know why, my father said, I could get you to run up the hill if I wanted. We said, no, you can't, we're tired, we don't like the hill, we're complaining, I guess. He changed the topic of the conversation. A few minutes later he said, whoever gets home first will get a full cup of grape juice at the Shabbos table. This was Shabbos. You know what happened when he said that? We all ran up the hill. When we got home, he said, so did I get you guys to run up the hill? Oh, yes, he did. Did he create a real change in us that we wanted to run up the hill? No, but he put in an outside lure. Put in something external that didn't create a change in us, but made us forget about the hill for a second and think about that other thing. That wasn't real change was created in us. In other words, like this: when Yaakov would give them, make the geula, make the redemption be too palpable, be too achievable, be too reachable. In other words, that they become too inspired because of what he's told them. It's not really going to be them changing. And the problem with that is, once that inspiration goes away, will they continue? If in middle of the hill, my dad would have said, joking, no grape juice for you, we would have stopped right away. We weren't motivated to run up the hill. We were motivated for that cup of grape juice. So here, the Rebbe's words like this. When one's godly service is done with divine input and not with our own efforts, it'll not endure. For once the divine assistance ceases, he will naturally fall from his current level. Only when one's service is done by his own efforts will it endure and bring about the final everlasting redemption, after which there can be no exile. So the problem is, if we make it too alluring, if we make it too inspirational, if we know that if we really are told and shown that it's right here, right now, and our deeds can change it, it's not really resonating necessarily within us deeply enough. And it's very important that this hope and faith and yearning and working for Mashiach's coming be something that creates a change within us. And as a matter of fact, in text 13a, the Gemara in Shabbos, tractate Shabbos 31a, we quote as follows. Rava said, when a person comes to the heavenly court after he passes away, he is asked, listen to the first question by the way, he's asked, were your business dealings honest? Did you set time for Torah study? Did you yearn for redemption? Well, what's very telling, first of all, what's the first question? Were you honest in your business? It's the first question when you come to heaven after 120 years, after dying. You're honest in your business. Second question is, did you set time for Torah study? Third question is, did you yearn for redemption? What does it mean to yearn for redemption? So we have in 13b what the Rambam tells us in the Laws of Kings, Hilchos Malachim, chapter 11, Halacha 2. Anyone who does not believe in the Mashiach or does not await his coming denies not only the statements of the other prophets, but those of the Torah and Moses our teacher. We are instructed to wait for Mashiach's coming. It needs to be something within us. So what was Yaakov thinking? What kind of he was trying to create this type of excitement that would push us. that would kind of propel us to be really excited and inspired about Mashiach's coming. But hey, wouldn't that be like an external thing? Wouldn't that be like a prop that is only works once it's there? And wouldn't that be not really inspiring the sustainable change that we talk about that needs to be there, that the person has to really yearn from it? You know, there's a saying in the Gemara, a person prefers kav shelo, one portion of something he earned, than tisha kabit shel chavero, than 9 portions given to him by somebody else. Very often, disillusionment of children, it's a difficult thing when it comes to money. A parent that has money has 2 choices: to spoil, to share with the child, not to share with the child. If he doesn't share with the child, if he shares with the child, very often the child gets spoiled and sluggish and doesn't really achieve anything on their own. And even when they do some achievements, they're thinking, well, just because I have a rich father, it's not really my true accomplishment, and he feels very low self-esteem. If the father doesn't support the kid, then the kid starts thinking, father doesn't love me, doesn't want to be stingy with me. It's very difficult. There's a very difficult balance. If a parent doesn't have money, so sometimes the child has a plus. He can achieve things on his own. But then again, sometimes he's at a disadvantage. He doesn't have any opportunity. But one thing is clear, that what's good for us as humans, built into our very psyche, built into our humanity, is the need for achievement. For us, if something that we achieve, that becomes something valuable. People that win lotteries usually friddle away the money. It hasn't really created a change within them, within their way of thinking, within who they are. Something is earned, it changes the person. So, it seems very simple. That's why Hashem makes us earn things. Couldn't Hashem just make life easy? The reason He makes us work is because part of our persona is that we need to have partnership. How do we get partnership in God's world? By needing to have effort. So it's not kind, it wouldn't be kind of Hashem to take away the efforts needed by us. It's just like when you make it too easy for your kid. Somebody recently told me that if I have a child, if you have a child who you think has a little insecurity or low self-esteem, try and put upon them certain tasks. Because when they do those tasks and they achieve them, they feel good about themselves. They feel that they can achieve something. So you think you're going to help your kid, and he looks like he's unsure about himself. So, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. No, that's a short, long way. The long, short way is to encourage them to do it because they need to feel good about themselves. So what's Yaakov planning here to do? He wants to reveal, but he's going to make it not our yearning for Mashiach. It's going to make it kind of a dazzling light that's been turned on, and we kind of get sucked in. So what was Yaakov thinking? That's why God took away the knowledge. What was Yaakov thinking? So here the Rebbe gives his explanation. Text 14. Yaakov wanted us simply to leave the exile as soon as possible. Perhaps the redemption would not be the most complete, but it would come quickly. That's a father. I can't bear to see my son suffering. Maybe it's not going to be in the best possible way. Maybe he's not going to, but I want him just to get out of the exile. That's the meaning of the word bikesh, as in a bakasha, request. Yaakov's intention was to request from God to hasten the coming of the end time. But ultimately Hashem, of course, is the decider, and Hashem says, I don't want it to be that way. Because Hashem wants the redemption to be perfectly complete, which can only happen if the Jewish people's efforts to hasten his arrival is also complete. Therefore, the Shekhinah departed from him to allow for a more complete redemption. So what do we do? So it's obvious that from the very beginning of time, from Yaakov's time, Hashem wants us to be the ones to hasten his coming. From time to time, he tells us times that would be opportune times for Mashiach's coming to show that it's not far off and that we can work and hasten it. But ultimately, it's up to us. So what should we be doing to bring Mashiach? Let's go to a letter from the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov being the founder, the absolute father of Hasidism. Baal Shem Tov being how many years ago? 300 years. We're a little bit more than 300 years from the birth of the Baal Shem Tov. What does the Baal Shem Tov say as follows? Text 1, it's page 248. On Rosh Hashanah of the year 5507. So let's figure out how many years ago is that?
200 years.
5,507. We're now 5,777. That's 270 years ago.
Yeah, 200.
270 years ago. It says the Baal Shem Tov, I performed by means of oath an elevation of soul to the highest spiritual realms. As known to you, Baal Shem Tov had an ability to, so to speak, have an out-of-body experience, but a planned one, but a programmed one. He left his conscious state, in other words, his physical state, and he attained a higher level of consciousness. He said, I saw wondrous things I had never ever seen before. I ascended from level to level until I entered the chamber of the Mashiach, where he learns Torah with all the sages and the righteous. I saw great joy there. At first I thought that the reason for this joy was because I had passed away from the physical world, heaven forbid. In other words, my soul had joined the souls of the righteous, and there's a big celebration when a soul comes and joins the other souls in heaven. It's a celebration. They all rejoice that the soul has successfully fulfilled its journey, and now that's why a day of passing of a tzaddik is actually a day of joy, because there's a deeper level achieved by that soul. But no, later they told me that my time had not yet come to die, since they have great pleasure on high from what I'm doing below. The letter continues, and then he says, I asked the Mashiach, says Mashiach, when will the Master come? When is Mashiach coming? And he answered, this is how you will know. This is the famous words in Hebrew. Kishiyafutzu ma'inotecha chutza. When your teaching will become public and revealed in the world, and your well springs will burst forth to the farthest extremes. In other words, when the well springs of the Baal Shem Tov, the well springs, the teachings of Hasidism will become widespread and spread all over to the furthermost extremes of place. We'll soon discuss this. This will be the time Mashiach comes. Mashiach says, I was stunned and distressed. This could be so long. When will it just finally be? But we're 270 years later. And we know in our generation the Rebbe was very, very, very conscious and focused on this. When the well springs of the Baal Shem Tov are revealed, this means Mashiach come. Because the Baal Shem Tov taught to look at the inner story, the inner teachings of the Torah. In other words, the inner track. Shem Tov taught that in every blade of grass, God's holy intention is there. A blade of grass doesn't rustle in the wind without being part of God's intention. Divine providence on every single individual thing. The world is constantly being created. The space we create for God, the consciousness, the God consciousness that the Baal Shem Tov's teachings create in this world, make us a fitting vessel for God's open presence to be revealed. So how do we spread the teachings of Baal Shem Tov? So first of all, by making ourselves cognizant of it. So by studying the teachings of Hasidism, we become more aware of godliness. And these are the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov that come into our psyche. But we have to spread further. Farthest extremes can be geographically. And this is one of the reasons the Rebbe said to print the book of Tanya as many places as possible, because those are the teachings of Baal Shem Tov. And so they spread further and further. And so thousands of different prints have taken place. In Thailand alone, we have one printed in Bangkok, of course, many years ago. Chiang Mai, Koh Samui, Phuket, Pattaya. We have in Vietnam, we printed, these were printed by the time by Rabbi Gabi Holzberg, blessed memory, was killed a few years later in Mumbai. In Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, in Burma, and we do it in Vientiane, Laos, and they've been done in thousands of places around the world. So there's another way of spreading the well springs of the Baal Shem Tov. Another way, which we have learned today, would be the internet. It goes. Well, I just recently heard from that somebody told me that his old elderly mother was trying to describe. She doesn't understand. She doesn't have a computer. She doesn't understand how these things. But she says in Yiddish, "Die Sachen fliehen in the Himmelen." Things are running around in the heavens. She says people getting messages. Who knows what's going on? She's not wrong. We call it the cloud, right? So the Hasidism being spread through all mediums, through WhatsApps and emails and Twitters and YouTube like we're doing right now, and all the other mediums that Torah and mitzvahs and world springs of Hasidus are being spread. These are all ways that we bring it to the furthest extremes. And ultimately, we had the great gift in our generation that the Rebbe proclaimed, particularly several years before he passed away, that this is the time Mashiach is coming. It's imminent. It's about to come. Not to make us depressed every day that he hasn't come, but to make us excited that it's about to come, and we're very close, and we have it within our power as we learned. Can't tell us, can't make it in a way that we're forced, so to speak, because the great light, we're forced into wanting the Mashiach. It has to come from us. So therefore, actually, the Rebbe gave a talk several months before, it was about 10, 11 months before he had a stroke. Very, very passionate talk about, talking to the people, you have to want Mashiach to come. It's not enough that I tell you you should want Mashiach to come. You have to want it. So this is why we study about what it means to have godly revelation. First, and unfortunately, we are helped along by many situations in the world. Today we have, we are, as Jews, we face many, many, many challenges. So we want the Mashiach to come for the standard, all classic reasons. Because the big tzaras, the big trouble we have in this world. But besides for that, we should really want Mashiach for the very pristine, good, and holy reason, and that is, because right now God's presence is obscured. We get moments of inspiration sometimes where we feel really excited or at one with God, but they're very far and few between, and they're also not at the level which is going to be when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, it's going to be as if we can see and visualize and literally be at one with God. That's got to be the most amazing, whatever kind of physical delight you can imagine, this is infinitely more. Whatever people search for, they look for pleasures and for drugs and for experiences, the experience of comprehending in a way of visualization of the presence of God and of the depth of God is an intensity of enjoyment, of pleasure that cannot be paralleled by anything we know about in this physical world. And the thing is, you don't get overdose. It's not dangerous for your health, it's good for your health. And that's what we look forward to when Mashiach comes, this total awareness and oneness with God, which will make everything else unimportant. Nothing else will tempt us. It's so obvious, you do the will of God, you're one with God, and you have this intense, phenomenal, spiritual, and even sensory experience. All people will want to do is to follow and do what God wants. May this be speedily in our days, and when that happens, if He comes right now, we'll stop fasting and we'll start feasting. Amen.
Amen.
And then we have to also take off the live.